I understand you're a fan of Nelson Mandela.
Sure.
What do you think are some of the lessons we can learn specifically from Nelson?
Well, it was interesting. When I came up with the idea of writing the book, Leading at a Higher Level, Margie and I had been heading off to a safari in Africa, and about a week before we were at a dinner party, and the host and hostess said, why don't we go around the table and say, if you could have dinner with anybody in the world that's still living, who would you like to have dinner with? And when it got to me, it was an easy choice. I said, I'd like to have dinner with Nelson Mandela. I'd love to have dinner with a guy who's in jail for 28 years, treated poorly and all, comes out of fully love, compassion, reconciliation, and all. And so I got a copy of A Long Walk to Freedom about his life and was reading that as I was heading over to the jungle. And we had been in the jungle before, but off of that, I realized some things about the jungle more vividly than before. Very competitive, very territorial. You know, I mean, when a lion roars, what the lion really is saying, you know, it's mine, mine, mine. And if you listen to a recording of a lion, that sounds what they're doing. This baby, this is my territory. You mess with me, you know, and quite vicious and all. And I realized that, you know, we as human beings have some choices that the other animals don't, you know. And we have a choice every day whether we want to, you know, be self-interested, it's all about us, or we want to be interested in the greatest good for the greatest number. And that's a choice that people make. And so I said, wow, what a difference with the leaders who basically think that their job is to serve rather than be served. And that was, you know, what Mandela's whole philosophy is. That's what Gandhi's whole philosophy was. You know, it wasn't about them. It was about what's best for the greatest number of people and all. And so I think we can learn a lot from those kinds of leaders, and we need more servant leaders, I think, in the world, rather than people that think it's all about themselves. I mean, you've run into some problems here with your government officials, you know, acting like it's all about them and all, and certainly we've had that, and, you know, you can go around the world. And I think we ought to just, you know, finally just stomp our foot and say, we're just not going to put up with it. That, you know, I would interview any candidate that you want to have for the next prime minister and all and say, tell me about how you're going to be a servant leader. What are you going to do to show that this is, then you're going to be a problem solver, not all about getting elected next time. And we don't need people in that, you know. And so I was a government major as an undergraduate, and in America, the founding fathers never anticipated politics would be a career. The House of Representatives is 2 years. Why? Because they thought, well, you could give up 2 years of your life to go serve the government because you couldn't fly back and forth at those times. The only reason Senate was longer was they thought somebody ought to know the town. But they never thought that, you know, people would want to get reelected and all that. So you have seniority and all that kind of thing. I mean, we really need people in our government that are there to serve rather than be served, to solve problems rather than, you know, to build their own power base.
Again, if somebody is driven mostly by their own ego or by their pursuit of their own cars, helicopters, houses, whatever, but it's all about self, then can somebody transform themselves into a servant leader? Or do you have to sort of innately be born with that characteristic, do you think? Do they need to have a massive paradigm shift?
People have asked me about how you can shift people. I only know 3 ways. One, a near-death experience is very helpful. I've never known anybody who almost died that didn't come out and kind of look at life a little bit differently.
Does the Ken Blanchard companies offer that service?
Second is, I think, some kind of spiritual awakening. I think people who really, you know, get involved in a higher power, and it's not to say that there's one right, wrong one. I've found, you know, are different. And the third is if they have a really good role model that they admire and all. But is it hard to turn somebody around? I think it is. You know, I think sometimes people just come out of the chute and all. We all come into the world self-serving. I mean, baby gets home from the hospital, doesn't say, you know, how can I help around the house? They yell and everybody runs around.
Yeah.
And it's a journey to move from being self-serving to serving. And that's one that you really want, you know. You want to ask questions of people, you know, what's in their life that made them. I mean, like, my dad was an admiral in the Navy and well decorated in the Second World War. And I'll never forget, in the 7th grade, I got elected president of the class, you know. It was beginning of junior high school, and I came home, I'm all proud. And my dad says, congratulations, Ken, but now that you have that position, don't ever use it. He said, great leaders are great because people respect and trust them, not because they have power. I mean, he started giving me lessons and all, you know, and you would think that it was strange coming from a military guy, but my father said this whole baloney, my way or the highway, is just crazy, particularly into battle. I mean, if your men don't trust you and all, they'll shoot you before the enemy gets you, you know. And he said, you know, if you don't hear what the problems are from your men, you know, watch your tail, you're going over the side, you know. They've cut you off and you're nothing without your people. And I mean, I was just constantly given lessons about that. So even before I got into the study of leadership, I knew that was the way it needed to be.
Yeah, because I know that Nelson Mandela, for example, Time magazine voted him as one of the top leaders of all time, and one of the things they cited was his smile.
Yes.
As a sort of powerful leadership lesson, and some, as you said, some of the most simple things can get forgotten.
Yeah.
What about Barack Obama, Ken? He's now the CEO of the USA. What would you say are some of the lessons we can learn, either from how he got into victory or into power, or since he's taken office?
Well, you know, it was really fascinating to see how he got elected, because he was running a 2010 campaign, and Hillary and his Republican candidate were running 1990s campaigns. I mean, he was using the internet, he was using technology and all. So he's a really smart guy, and but it's a tough job. He's inherited probably the toughest circumstances of any president, probably since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you know, after World War II. And so, you know, I think he's got the real potential. I just hope he gathers people around him that help him, because, you know, he doesn't have a lot of experience, you know, in you know, being a leader per se. I mean, he was a community organizer, and he's was a senator and all that kind of thing. So, but I think around the world, I think people are optimistic because he seems to have an open hand attitude, less talk, you know, and I think that's what, you know, people have been kidding about him getting the Nobel Peace Prize, but I think they were reinforcing a sense or a philosophy that they got from him that the world really needs, particularly from somebody from America, which is less talk rather than less, you know, label you, and that. So it's really too early to decide. He's got all kinds of issues to deal with, both economically and his international relations. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, but one of the things I've noticed is that he's adopted the mindset of yes, we can, which is important, I think, for any nation or organization to have that.
I think he's a possibility thinker, and I also have admired so far is that he's made a few mistakes, and he apologizes for them and takes credit for them. I haven't seen him blame anybody. He had a couple of appointments where it turns out that they had some background stuff that somebody should have checked on, and he didn't say that was their fault. He'd say, hey, you know, I can't shift the responsibility, so I apologize. That was a goof.
Ken, you've dedicated your career so far very much to helping individuals and organizations better themselves and to be as good as they possibly can be. So if there's one piece of advice you'd give to an individual now to make sure they can be the best they can be, what would that be?
I'd say the biggest advice I'd give people is to recognize that leadership is not all about you. It's really about your people and accomplishment of goals. And if the focus is on you, you're never going to make it. The focus should be on them. You're there to serve, not to be served. And I think you finally become an adult when you realize that. And we just need to have more leaders that are there to serve and solve problems and help people win than they are to accumulate money, recognition, and power for themselves.
Fantastic.
Bevo